Yo, welcome to Millennial Championship YouTube. Today, we're going to be making a tier list. I'm not going to do all of these decks, but the link will be down below if you would like to do a tier list as well. And if you would, you are more than welcome to join the Discord, which is also down in the description box below, and share yours, or in the comments, you can tell me why I'm wrong or anything like that. But this is based off of my current testing for the Pokemon 2022 World Championships in London. I've been putting a fair amount of time into it because, I want to win. So let's go ahead and take a quick look. We're going to start at the top, of course, because it's where the best decks are. My number one deck, my tier one, is going to be Arceus Inteleon, the straightforward water version. I think it is the best deck in the format. The unfortunate part is it does take a bad matchup to what is the second best deck in the format, IMO, which is Palkia. But otherwise, it beats most things. It beats any of the people are going to come in with a secret spicy deck, something like that. Usually has the ability at least to win those types of matchups. It's just a hard deck to bring a hard counter to. So for me, Arceus Inteleon is my number one deck. Palkia right there behind it. So if you're like, Mello, I think Palkia is number one and Arceus is number two. Sure. I'm willing to accept that might be true, but they're both up there. They are both by far, I think, the two best decks in the game. I don't want to bring them because I don't want to play either of the mirror matches, or they both have a big target on their back. But in the end, they're both incredibly powerful and incredibly good decks. My next one down is going to be, there they are, Mewtwo V-Union Miltank. I think this deck is right below, which is interesting because I think it takes favorables to both of these if people aren't teching for or respecting them. So this deck, even though I think it does beat both of these usually, assuming people aren't teching, I do think it's a little lower. It is a pretty counter meta deck, and it is techable against. The fact that we no longer, it's no longer a surprise factor. People can throw stuff in their decks. I think it's not as powerful, but it's still an incredibly good deck. So I'm going to put it a step below them. Still incredibly good. I played it on stream today, and just as long as you set up, you're going to win a lot of your games. The next one is Arceus with the Charizard. It's pretty much this exact same list, but you're going to throw some Charizards in there as well. I just think it's not quite as good, just because it just has a couple extra little things in it. It's not as good. You have another bad starter in the Radiant Zard. You may be a little harder to pull off a Melanie play if you miss the turn one attach or something like that because of the fire energies instead of the water energies. I want the Charizard to be good. It's just, it keeps being not good. Most of the time when I play an Arceus Radiant Charizard deck, I'm finding myself just being a regular Arceus deck that has these couple extra cards in it that aren't actually helping anything. It's good though. It's tier 1.5 for a reason. Now we're going to go ahead and take a step down. These are all still very, very good decks, things that can win the tournament, such as Mew VMAX. People are playing less and less Mew VMAX because it doesn't take good matchups to any of these top decks. Obviously, the Charizard doesn't really help anything, but you have Path, Marnie, Path, Roxanne, Path, Roxanne. You have a ton of energy disruption, Yveltal, Hammers, Flannery, Sydney, whatever. A ton of stuff in here that can disrupt Mew. And then it's just the same deck as this pretty much, unless you don't have Path. If you don't have Path, Mew actually takes a pretty favorable in there. If you do play Path, then you're a little janky. But Mew, my tier 2, top of tier 2, it is really, really, really good. But it doesn't take good matchups into the current top decks. You always hear people saying, oh, people aren't teching for Mew anymore. Because the decks naturally are teching for Mew. Roxanne Path, or just having V-Stars that have 280 HP and can hit pretty hard, those are all natural techs. That's all you need. You don't have to run a dark package to really quote unquote tech for Mew. Would it make your Mew matchup better? Heck yeah. Is it good? Meh, not really. I think you can lose to Mew and still beat Mew, if that makes sense. You can take a not great Mew matchup and still beat Mew. My next one in is Ice Rider Inteleon, and I'm also a big fan of where is Ice Rider with B-Barrel. I might be blind and missing it, but Ice Rider Inteleon with a Palkia in it as well. I'm a fan of putting the Palkia in there because the V-Star ability is good. Having a different weakness is good. It hits really hard. It's a 2-prizer, which is cool because you can kind of make them into some awkward plays where you're like, all right, 3-prizer, 2-prizer, Roxanne, 3-prizer. You know, these types of things are really good. You can use the Greninja if you run the Palkia in there. It's just, I like it a lot more. So I would run it with Palkia and Ice Rider. And like I said, I think both the B-Barrel and the Inteleon engine are neck and neck. They are both super good decks. They are both something to watch out for. And I think they went from, these are the secret plays to Worlds, so people are like, oh, wait, no, these decks are really good. If you haven't started testing Ice Rider for Worlds, you should. And if you aren't respecting Ice Riders for Worlds, you might want to consider respecting it. It could be bad, might not be worth it, but it's still a pretty darn powerful deck. Next one is going to be Dialga. Dialga is incredibly fast, incredibly powerful. A Dialga that runs hot is as terrifying as a Mew that runs hot. It takes a pretty solid Arceus and a pretty okay Palkia matchup as well. Dialga can beat just about everything because it turns out taking an extra turn and being able to Oko stuff as a 2-prizer are both really good things. The big reason why Dialga is not higher, if you've played it before, taking the last 1 or 2 prizes is really hard for the deck. If it weren't for that, Dialga would be a tier 1 or BDIF, but I've been running into issues with it playing it or playing against it where it's able to take a big lead really fast and then kind of struggle the rest of the way out. If someone can figure out those last couple prizes consistently, it's a really good deck. But in the meantime, it's struggling with Roxanne Path. It can struggle just simply going second against Arceus, and there's no Vs on the field to boss and V-Star or anything like that. Good deck. It's lacking a little bit. The next one is Azul's Arceus, Flying Pikachu, etc. deck. This is coming lower and lower the more I play in this format, and I think part of that reason why is it's just the Arc Intel matchup's not that good. You'll see online tournaments, it beats some Arc Intels more than I think it should. I'm a fan of the deck just because I'm a fan of the B-Barrel engine right now. It's still good. Tier 2 is still a very powerful deck. You don't want to say anything bad about a Tier 2 deck because a Tier 2 deck, any of these things can win Worlds. We could see Dialga or Ice Rider or Mew or Flying Pikachu win Worlds. We could also see them completely flop. It's not unrealistic at all. The next one in is going to be, and this is largely because of the online tournament results lately, I think Arceus Gyarados is starting to show up. In my testing, it struggles against Arceus and Inteleon more than you'd expect. Even getting the Jolteon out doesn't seem to be as much of a checkmate as you would have assumed, but it's still a really good, powerful deck. The Gyarados is still very big, very strong. Hyper Beam is a good attack, hits for 240, and of course has the Oko option with the Memory Capsule and the Get Angry to copy the Gyarados V. Next one, still in tier 2. These are all still very viable decks, is Rapid Strike Malamar. Another one that people have kind of gone away from, but it's kind of being able to creep back in a little bit. You do have to run Manaphy in order to not get Greninja sniped and your entire board wiped, but Arceus decks are starting to take away the quick shooting, so they aren't able to pull off the, Aqua Bullet and active Malamar, double quick shooting Aqua Bullet, a benched Inkay, or you have the Manaphy to prevent that play as well. The Sharon's Care is still annoying for sure. Your stall matchup is like an auto win, which is very cool. Palkia matchups, not the worst. And then stuff like Ice Rider ends up being a pretty darn good matchup as well. So good deck. I think Rapid Strike Malamar is going to make a bit of a resurgence. We saw Ross Cawthon do incredibly well at NAIC with it, and I don't think that was a fluke. I think you have to play it well. If you're planning to play Rapid Strike Malamar at Worlds, you should be practicing now because takes a lot of practice to be able to finish games even relatively quickly with the deck. Everything else, I think I'm going to put in a lower tier. So other stuff that I do think is cool, Arceus Duraludon is going to stay a deck for sure. I just don't think it's the best thing in the world. Blissey Miltank, another one, still a pretty okay deck, but I don't think it's the best thing. We have the Radiant Zard, again, solid little deck. Beedrill, I'm all for the Arceus Beedrill list becoming a better and better and better list, but I'm not sold on it yet. Urshifu, unless you're Tord Reklev, I'm not sure if I would want to bring Urshifu, but I'm messing around with it. I could see with more testing and more refined lists, this starts to creep up for sure. But as of right now, based off results, based off my little bit of testing, and of course my honestly not quite optimal play with it, it's a very hard deck to play optimally, but at a certain point it's like, Is the deck hard to play, or is the deck just not that great and everything has to go right? We'll find out. But as of right now, it's in my tier 3. But like I said, this is the one that I think I wouldn't be shocked to see go up. Beedrill depends on the meta for sure. But Rapid Strike Urshi, it's down here for right now. And the order of this tier doesn't matter. I'm just grabbing them as I see them. Everything else, I'm not super sold. I really wish Zoroark was better. It just hasn't been very good. Durant's trash. Reggies aren't very good. If you want to go the single prize route, it's probably Lunarock. I'm going to put Lunarock down here. I know someone in the comments tell me how wrong I am. That's fine. But it's kind of where I'm at for Worlds and the stuff that I'm considering. A ton of the other card decks just aren't there for me right now. They're pretty much entirely off my radar unless someone brings, a broken list or something like that. I think the only other one would be Stonejourner that can show up here. But I think Stonejourner is just worse than Mewtwo Miltank is. It doesn't have Miltank outs, and a single Phoebe doesn't really fix that. And once you start teching for Miltank, you're just playing a worse version of the deck, and you already take a bad matchup like Mew, for example. So Stonejourner, it's just a worse stall deck, but it is technically a viable deck. If you told me you're bringing Stonejourner to Worlds, I'd say, why aren't you bringing Mewtwo? And maybe there's an argument for this is a better deck for that specific meta. I don't imagine that meta is going to exist, but maybe it will. I don't know. I can't see into the future. Anyway, that's the current tier list of what I'm at. Let me know in the description box below. Like I said, feel free to join the Discord in the description box as well and post your own tier list. That'll be linked down below. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all the other YouTube stuff, and I will catch you all in the next video. Peace out.